Welcome to Beyond the Desk Admin Advocates, where we explore what it truly means to be an administrative professional in today's world. I'm Melissa Mahoney, CEO of the International Association of Administrative Professionals.
And I'm Rachel Suman, CXO of IAAP.
This podcast isn't your typical industry talk. We're here to bring you real conversations, real stories, and real solutions.
From AI to self-awareness journeys, we're here to discuss the deep issues that admins face every day. This is Beyond the Desk Admin Advocates.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of season 2 of Beyond the Desk. We're so excited that you're here. And I'm really excited about this topic, actually, for lots of reasons. But because this was overwhelmingly, we mentioned that we asked the form and that many of you submitted ideas of what we should talk about. And AI was like overwhelmingly the answer in this. And we actually both, I think, love AI. I use the term love with a little bit of salt.
I think that's true.
But I think love is probably, as much as you can love technology, we love AI. So I'm really excited to talk about this with you and kind of share some of not only the tips and tricks that we both use AI for, but also kind of address some of the bigger ethical questions around AI that are floating in the world and specifically in our profession.
Yes. And I think it is. We did do an episode last season about AI. I think it is truly a testament to how influential AI is in our ecosystem and in the business environment. And I mean, personally, too. It's such a huge, impactful, influential topic. And that was clear in the submissions we got to talk more about AI. So essentially, this is AI 2.0 for us, but we really thought we would focus on, delegating to AI, talking about how we use it, but also talking about, some of the things that are coming up in the ethical space or just, case use scenario. What are people using it for? What has been successful? What are the limitations? And so this concept of sort of delegating some of the things to AI so that you can focus more on human experiences is where we're headed in this AI session today.
Which I really love this aspect before we dive super far into it, because we do get asked somewhat often, is AI taking over the profession? Is it replacing the profession? So really we do not believe so. I will speak. People, what did we say? I heard it and it was so accurate. AI is not replacing admins. Admins who use AI are replacing admins. So
if you don't embrace it, you're in trouble.
Yes, but that's really why delegating, I love that word in the title for this one, because it really is, let's figure out how to use it and harness it in a way that is impactful so that we can focus on really cool parts of the role, I think.
Absolutely, which is the human part, the relationships, the communal experience that we have. Those are the things that we really have the unique ability to do that AI really simply can't do for us. So let's start with sort of the ethical, is AI right or wrong? This is a fairly common issue or argument. It has come up in the IAAP space when we're talking about submissions from folks, whether that is content for any of our content channels, the magazine, whether that's submitting applications for positions or leadership roles within the organization. The argument around, is it right or wrong to use AI to support some of those things? And we mentioned it in the leadership episode, but, unfortunately, it's not black or white. There is no right or wrong here. There really is truly an environment that we have to explore around what is right or wrong for a situation, a scenario, an organization. So there are organizations and businesses that are creating their own policies, their own guidelines. There are some ethical implications here that need to be considered. There's proprietary information. There's access to confidential data and information that needs to be protected. Those are all things that organizations, attorneys are really digging into and creating real policy around. So first and foremost, we can't answer that question for you inside of your organization. You have to know what policies, and you probably already know what you do and don't have access to from a technology platform standpoint. But beyond that, if you were to access something on your phone that isn't on the network, what are the implications there? What are your policies? What does your organization say about the use of AI inside of your organization? That's first and foremost. We can't answer that for you. But just in general, let's talk a little bit about, this idea that it's not a human response. And so we're going to discredit or disqualify a response because, and here's where we're shifting over into the judgment space where we're saying it's wrong of you to use AI because it's not your authentic human voice. You're not submitting your own personal content. So that's where it's really gray, murky area. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that because there's so much nuance in that space. It is not a clean and clear yes or no answer. It's definitely scenario based. It's definitely situationally relevant, and we just want to talk about some of that nuance.
And I think 100% agree. And I think we could start out by saying I think labeling it as right or wrong is not a great lens to look at it.
It's wrong. It's the wrong way.
Started to say that. But I do think it's the wrong question to ask, if I can phrase it like that. If you say, is it right or wrong? That is a not helpful or productive question to be asking. It really is it appropriate in this situation, or is it not appropriate? Does it follow policy? Does it stripping the right, wrong, dare I say, morality, quote unquote, out of it, I think is the way, because this is, it's a tool. It's a technology tool. And when we start labeling it with those things, that can actually hinder our mindset to look at it as an opportunity to delegate, not delegate, and make it a more objective view versus coloring it with some type of bad thing that we have to stay away at all costs. And it is a barrier for a lot of folks in the community who may just be like, okay, well, I'm not using AI at all. That's not an option at this point.
Correct. The toothpaste is so far out of that tube that I mean, you can't get toothpaste back in the tube, period, but it is down the drain. Like if you are still on a position of, I don't want to touch it. I don't want to use AI. I don't want to explore it. You will get left behind if you're not already being left behind. And that is true even if your company is sort of locked down on their policies for AI, because folks are now using it and integrating it into their personal lives and personal worlds. It can be a true game changer in lots of different aspects. So we would advocate that you start exploring at least an understanding of what AI is, how it can support you even outside of your workplace. And definitely if your workplace is embracing AI, you need to be on top of it. You need to be aware of, not just what the policies are, but how are other people using it in your organization, and how should you be using it to improve efficiency or, impact or any of the things. There's so much capability here that you will be left behind if you're not. I think we're probably past that part of the conversation. I think the reality is where we are today is if you don't know anything about AI, you are behind at this point.
Because just because your current organization doesn't use it doesn't mean that tomorrow you won't. And hopefully none of this is true for literally tomorrow, but we're not going to be at our organizations forever, right? So this is one of those skill sets that you have to stay on top of, regardless of whether it is currently in part of your job role or part of your organization. So agree 100%. It's non-negotiable.
Right. And that again, there's so much nuance here. It doesn't necessarily mean everyone should be accessing every single AI platform, understand how they all work. You don't have to have a relationship with every single AI. It's a lot to manage because it is a relationship. Every single one of these platforms.
I love that word.
Yeah, you do. You create a relationship with them. There's a personality there that starts to evolve as you navigate using a platform. They start to learn your voice. You start to learn what they can actually help you with. And to say that you have, 8 new relationships with 8 new platforms is, I mean, good on you for people who are doing it, but
That sounds exhausting.
it's exhausting to try and think that way. So that we're not advocating for that, but we are advocating that you're exploring what AI is. Pick one tool or resource, get with someone in your community who has embraced it, chat with them about what they're using, try it out. Start not dipping your toes in the water, but like let's wade into the water here with AI, because if you're not anywhere near the water at this point, you need to be. The
Luckily,
kind way to say it, I think.
I think so too. Luckily, you said in the last episode that you would not promise that we would not talk about leadership, and I'm about to talk about it. So thank you for not promising, because here it comes. Because I do think that critical thinking is an essential part of AI, which is a leadership competency. But really knowing, to your point, when to use it, where to use it, how to use it, which platforms, and employing critical thought to support that is an essential part of this. And so we would be remiss if we did not talk about that's the human part of delegating and what we're talking about with AI.
Very much so. And I will say, like, when we're talking about policy or, right or wrong or judging when someone is using AI, I do think we have a responsibility to disclaim as an organization or even as a person. If you expect something from someone that doesn't use AI, we're to the point now in this technology adoption of AI, you have to say it, because really we should be operating with the assumption that everyone is using AI all of the time, because it's very possible that they are. And whether you think that's right or wrong is really of no consequence at this point. You can have your judgment, but it really won't serve you in this space. What will serve you is if you're asking for something from someone and you do not want them to use AI, you should absolutely disclaim that. Whether that's an application process and that's, IWP has that responsibility as an organization, but you personally also have that responsibility. You're probably getting emails from folks 99% of the time that include some form of AI. If they're on an email, if they're on Microsoft 360, if they're on any sort of email tool, we all have the like suggested recommended response. I mean, it's there for a reason, and that is AI. So I just think if we can remove the judgment, you can have it, but if you can move beyond the judgment of is this right or wrong, or is this someone's personal voice, how much time did they put into this, how much did they really think about this, and you really think about, like, why do I have an issue with this? Why am I concerned about it? And we're going to unpack some of the reason why we think there's not a lot of reason why folks should be restricted from using AI, other than very much the confidentiality, legality. If there are, risks inside of your organization, you have proprietary information that you don't want that in open source AI. 100% agree with those restrictions. That's up to your organization, up to, probably attorneys. But when we're just talking about fundamental, like, is someone submitting work to you that has used AI, we're going to talk to you about why we think you should really be embracing it and maybe thinking differently about the use of AI. And one of the things that we keep talking about inside of our organization, because it has come up multiple times, is, people are like, well, I used an AI checker and it came back 100% AI. And we're like, yeah, but your AI checker is AI. So here we are in a circular argument.
Oh, the irony.
Okay, so you don't want them to use AI, but you're using AI to tell us that they're using AI. So there's a circular argument here that's really not going to get us anywhere. So I think the bigger question, the better question to ask is, why do I feel this way about AI? And it might be very specific to that case, and you might be able to pull that thread and say, no, there's a reason why, I need this content. I'm putting this author's name on this content, and readers need to know that I'm publishing content that was also derived from AI. There's a lot of there are a lot of things happening in the content creation space that might dictate. We don't have firm policies yet, but we might have to live inside of those policies. But if it's really just like, I wanted to hear their, they posted something on social media and I can't believe that they used AI to support that. Well, why do you have an issue with that? You enjoyed the content, but you judged it because you knew it wasn't 100% in that person's voice. Well, how do you know that, first of all?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, if you're putting it through an AI checker, I mean, everything is potentially AI at this point. So I just would challenge this concept of right or wrong isn't the best question to be asking. To your point, it's the wrong question. We can say that. It's really not. It's not about being right or wrong. We're just telling you, you're probably thinking in a very singular, small space, if that's the question you're focused on. Outside of making sure you're living within policies and, you're not doing anything that literally could get you in trouble with some sort of company authority or some authority. Outside of that, there's this beautiful ocean, wide open ocean of possibility with AI that we really would invite you to explore and start to unpack, which is a leadership competency. So, looking at your internal thought process and, why you feel a certain way about the use of AI is a great place to start to sort of unpack that judgment. That can also help you gain access to these platforms in a new way, in a way that maybe that thought process was preventing you from exploring.
Yeah, and I love this conversation so much for our community specifically, because traditionally this role has been, and I think for a lot of people still is, very task based. And that's not a bad thing. So again, no judgment, good, bad, right, wrong. It is task based, but the opportunities are endless. We talk about partnership. We talk about expansion and growth and all of the things that we see for this profession. And I'm going to say that AI is a huge part of how we get there, because AI, if you are delegating the task parts of your role, that frees up time. And that can be really scary for some people. So I want to acknowledge that feeling. I want to validate the feeling that you have. And also, to your point, challenge it and say, if you have somebody, that's the danger, is they actually become a person and that you're like friends with your AI. But you have something that is there to help support you in managing calendars or scheduling or email, whatever the task is that you discover. And we'll kind of go into some of these opportunities later. But if you have something that is doing that and you are freed up, that's an opportunity. That is a big, broad, vast amount of space that you can fill with things that only you can fill. So whether that is growing your role and expanding, creating an admin network within your organization, or taking on a project that you wouldn't have normally, or taking more from your executive to say, I can handle this now because I've gotten rid of these things and I want to help you more in a strategic place. Like, sky's the limit, right? So this is the exciting part. So if you can strip the judgment, strip away that, align with policies 100%, we are not advocating going against that. But once you get through all of that, look at this as that big, beautiful ocean of possibility and opportunity.
Yes. And I think we should recognize too that it's not often easy to use AI. So I do think that some of the judgment comes from assuming that someone just put something in AI, it popped out a question, and then they copied and pasted it to whatever it is, an email or an application or whatever the modality is. And the reality is 99% of the time, what that process looks like is critical thought. You're putting in a prompt to a platform and you're hoping to get something that is close to your voice. It takes a lot of massaging and back and forth and knowing how to prompt AI, which we're going to talk about. It takes a lot of effort, work, and energy. It might just be different type of time investment than if you were to just do the task yourself. And it might be more efficient than if you had sat down and done all of that from start to finish. It gets you to the end result a little bit quicker, more efficiently. And as you start to use it, it starts to become more effective because you start to to navigate, like, oh, now it knows my voice. So it sounds much more like my authentic personal brand. The more that you use it, and that cuts down on how much time you're using, but there is skill to that. This is not a, most often people are not popping something in an AI platform and coming out with one result and they're done with that thing.
If they are, let us know.
Right. I mean, it can get to that point if you have really worked inside of a platform and gotten to know it, and it has gotten to know you. And even still, there's exploration. We talk all the time with our colleagues who are using AI just like we are, and you pop it in different platforms and see what different answers you get. And you start to sort of formulate and put some of those pieces together. That's me. I'm doing those things. And at the end of the day, it's me who has to sign off on, I'm putting this work out there. I'm giving it to someone. So I do think if you can step outside, that some of that judgment comes from an assumption that folks are using it as a shortcut to critical thought or personality or putting your own authentic voice into it. And the reality is, in our experience, that is not at all. That's not how we use it. That's not how any of our colleagues use it. When we talk to folks who are really, truly using AI, you are putting yourself into that experience. So the outputs from it do reflect your critical thought, your knowledge, your voice, your brand. And if it is being used as a copy paste, again, then I'm going to make the assumption it's because they didn't have time. They needed that task to be efficient and short. And so it wasn't important for them to spend the time, effort, and energy. So if we can move ourselves beyond the right or wrong judgment, there's an opportunity here to, I think, embrace the fact that AI is becoming an integrated skill set and probably a non-negotiable skill set in business.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, without further ado, can we talk about the platforms and some of the ways that we use them and ways that we're hearing our community use them, and tips and tricks for everybody?
Yeah, and we have some specific ones that I think we are partial to, but this actually speaks to what we mentioned earlier, that it does take time. It is a relationship, so you have to spend the time, energy, and effort to learn a platform and give the platform time to learn you and your voice. So that's an investment of time and energy. And I know that's sort of the antithesis of why we use AI. We want efficiency, but it does, from my perspective, support. It's a different use of my time and energy and investment. So yeah, on the front end of learning a new platform, there's a little bit more investment, but then it does start to learn your personality. And so we've invested a lot of time in a couple of platforms, and there are other platforms out here that other folks enjoy and have invested time, energy, and effort into. So I want to disclaim this section with, again, there's no right platform. There's no wrong platform. They all have.
We're not getting a kickback.
We're not getting any kickbacks for this. We just want we want to illustrate for you, some maybe regular day-to-day use for some of these platforms and how we've integrated them into our work life.
Yeah.
Or personal life.
I think that we should start with, well, it's my favorite. I won't identify your favorite, but my favorite is Claude.
Same.
And we learned about this at our summit last year. So shout out to Summit, because you get some really good tips. Even if you're planning the conference, you get them. But we heard about this from Jim Spellos, our trainer. And I love Claude for a whole lot of reasons. I use Claude for a lot of writing. And to your point, it's gotten much easier as it's kind of learned me and I've learned it, but I use it often for writing emails, writing some social media posts. Full disclosure, real talk, I do use AI to help me write some social media posts. So that's one of my favorites, because it is not only that, and it captures my voice, I feel, in a way that is authentic to me, but it also is a little more private or restricted as far as what it searches on the internet. So I like it for that. Why do you like it?
Same. I do use ChatGPT and Claude probably equally. But Claude is the one that I go to when I know I need something that is authentic to me and my voice, that I'm not going to have to spend a lot of time. I can prompt Claude much quicker than ChatGPT is very much going to give me the standard. This is what I know about administrative professionals, and there are some, the backbone of the organization, some of those idioms that come up very frequently for admins. And I have found that I have taught Claude IAAP's definition of administrative professionals.
Same.
That in the beginning they didn't necessarily have the correct definition of an administrative professional. It was very much in a box of, an older definition of what an assistant or an admin does. And I have found that I've taught Claude through relationship use, that's actually not how we experience administrative professionals, and that's not what we aspire for administrative professionals as an organization. And so it knows not only my voice, but the association's perspective, mission, voice, purpose. It knows all of those things much better than ChatGPT. ChatGPT still very much relies on, it's so open source that it really does have an outdated view of the profession, and maybe not even outdated view, but a very narrow view of the profession. So where we are very philosophical and future focused and have these big dreams and hopes for the profession, and we understand how partnering can truly impact not only impact, but the ability and opportunity we have for partnering exists inside of our vision, mission, and values. Claude understands that now. My version of Claude understands that now. ChatGPT, not so much. So I definitely use Claude to help me write things that are in my voice and my brand. ChatGPT I use especially when I need something that's that's going to need a lot of resource. So that, to your point, Claude is a little bit more protected. ChatGPT will give me resources and links and all kinds of things. If I'm looking for a broader view of something, I'll pop it in ChatGPT. Sometimes I'll just pop different things on the different platforms just to understand a different perspective. So to me, it's no different than walking up to someone and asking a question and saying, what do you think about this? What's your perspective? That's sort of how I use those are the two main platforms I use for creating content. I'll say, like you said, writing, and I would say yes. And when I'm trying to create a report or content or synthesize a bunch of information that's coming from that's my perspective on something, or I'm sharing something even with the board. And again, this is not, it's work. It takes work to do that. It's just a different type of time investment that I use when I'm using those platforms. So same with Claude, and that's how I use ChatGPT. Would you add anything to that?
I actually don't use ChatGPT as much anymore because Claude, mostly what I'm using it as, I guess this is a good disclaimer to say that I am also not perfect in AI. There's no such thing as
There
perfect.
is no such thing.
However, I even have opportunity to expand my use of AI. So I really don't use ChatGPT as much anymore, but I would like to use it more for some of those spaces. A lot of what I have been using Claude for, I really did want to kind of keep it away from the more open source. So yeah, I don't use it as much for that reason, but agree.
Yeah.
The next actually platform that we're going to talk about, I am so excited about because it's a cool platform and there's a lot out there. But I think the meeting note-taking aspect of AI is so amazing, not only because it does a pretty dang good job, but it gives admin professionals the opportunity to speak into meetings in a way that I think has been really difficult. And not because whether it's giving access to the voice, all of the things that we talk about in the profession and seated at the table. And if you have all of that and you still are tasked with taking notes, your mind is in two different places. So it's really difficult, if not impossible, to take really robust notes and contribute meaningfully to the meeting. And so we're going to talk about Fathom because it connects to Zoom. We're a Zoom house. That's how we do it. And there are a ton out there that do really great work. And if you are not using AI for meeting note taking, I would say do that today. Like check in with policies, but do that today, because that frees you up to give you the opportunity to start using your voice and speaking into areas that you are not currently.
Very much agree with that. And Fathom is the one that we use on team because it is integrated and connected with Zoom, and we're kind of an all platform house, to be honest. We also are a Teams house, but for video conferencing, especially because we do a lot of webinars, we're a Zoom house, and we were a Zoom house before COVID. So we're like OG Zoom users. And Fathom is integrated and connected. And I will reiterate policy. So you obviously, need to be sure that it's a meeting that can be recorded. Because it does require recording in order for these meeting note-taking plugins to work. We've seen a couple of really great ones at conferences and have had such a tremendous experience with getting, a beautiful summary of all of the sessions from a conference. And that includes the sessions that we weren't able to attend because you can't be in the same place at the same time all at once in a conference.
We haven't figured that out.
All that have been to Summit know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's a fabulous use of that technology. And when you were talking about, the admin's ability to be in a meeting and participate, that ability to be present, research has proven to us that multitasking is a false thing. It's not a real thing. You can do it. You're just going to fail
at all of it.
And there's enough research to support that, multitasking is a joke. It's something that I wish we could do, but we cannot do multiple things well at the same time. It's proven. So being asked to have a voice and a seat at the table and then being asked to take notes takes away your voice because you are unable to be present in that meeting. You are there to listen and take action items and synthesize what folks are saying. It is impossible for you to participate fully and be completely present in the dialogue. So that is definitely a huge benefit we've seen. Even just, it definitely impacts admins probably more so than any other role in the organization. But even just thinking about like one-on-one meetings with people in our organization, it can truly be game-changing, especially if we're having an in-depth conversation and one of us is like, oh shoot, did you, what are we doing?
Are you writing this down?
Are you writing this down? Who's got the action items? It really does a great job of synthesizing key topics. For those of you who are Zoom users, I do also have to shout out Zoom's integrated AI. So like when you get a video recording back from Zoom now, it summarizes the key topics and gives you markers within the video of like this topic starts here and this topic starts here. So if you're watching a playback, that's AI. Like it's such a beautiful integrated efficiency that we have that I think has been a game changer for us and how we do work.
Yeah, agreed. I have to shout out someone that I know who gave me this tip that I absolutely adore, Lauren Serrano. Thanks for this tip. It was such a great one. The platform that I'm going to reference is one of several is called Otter AI. And she actually was telling me how she uses AI is, I don't know if any of you are like this. I know you are, but kind of talk things out loud to ourselves more often than not. So she's like, I'll just turn on AI. I'll have it record kind of my download of thoughts, and then it summarizes, it gives me action items. And as soon as she said that, I'm like, oh my gosh, brilliant. How have I not been doing this before? So Lauren, thank you for that tip. But I think that's a really great one for admins. We've got so much in our head often that sometimes you just need to download it. And my hand hurts if I'm trying to write it down. So why not use AI for that? And that one's really nice because depending again on that one, you've got a little bit more freedom, I think, policy-wise. If you are downloading things, again, if you're talking about confidential information, we're just going to asterisk this whole thing with check your policy with your organization, but especially your own personal schedule. She also gave me a great tip. She's like, I will talk to AI. I can't remember which one she said she used, and have it route out. Like, I have all these errands and I tell it where I'm going and it routes out which way to go because this one's closer and it's on your way and everything. So some of those things that take up so much of our thought time, there's such a great ability to utilize that to free up our thought for other stuff.
1000% agree with that. And for those of you who are maybe introverted, introspective folks like me, I really do struggle with, I do all of that thinking, but it's inside my head. So like when we get the plugin, I'm just put it there. I don't care. Because it is really hard for me to vocalize. I'm not an external processor. I'm an internal processor. So it's hard for me to vocalize those things. And I have had to figure out, like, how can I do this? Because it is such a great tool, and there's so many things that never make it out of the introspection. And I'm a writer, because it's happening internally, that I've had to figure out, like, how can I use this and find safety for me that still allows my thought processes to manifest the way they need to without externally vocalizing. Some of that is writing. Like, I will stream of consciousness write it instead of talk it, and still ask AI to synthesize it for me so that I don't have to go back and, try to pull out the things that I needed from that. It does a beautiful job of that. So it doesn't even have to be vocal. You can absolutely type something out and then ask AI to review that and synthesize that for you, come up with key points, key themes. So that's how I use that sort of personal assistant component.
I love that.
And I think lastly, the platform we wanted to mention, because some of our team members are using it, is Copilot. I am not a user of Copilot.
I'm not there.
But we have a couple of super users, or maybe potential super users on team, because it's a growing platform. I know it has had some pain points, and there are a lot of things that it can do inside of the Microsoft platform. And if you're a Google house, Gemini is the Google version of this. Those, if your company allows them on your devices and on your platforms, there's a lot of really great efficiencies that you can implement with that. So while we can't specifically speak to the uses, I know the functionality of Copilot, and there's a lot of really cool integrative things that can happen between Microsoft programs and platforms, and email management, even just summarizing emails, and there's just a lot of possibility there with Microsoft Copilot, especially if you're in a Microsoft house in your organization.
I love that. I think we could probably talk about this for another hour. We will not, don't worry. But I think whether you're figuring out AI, I think as we wrap, I would love to see all of us do, and I'm going to add this to my own list, is sit down and really figure out what could AI potentially help you with, whether it's scheduling, whether it is travel planning, whether it's, marketing ideas, social media calendars, whatever that looks like for you. How can you really either dip your toe in if you haven't, or if you're wading in the shallow end, how do you go deeper and figure out how to make your life more efficient? So not to necessarily free up space, although free up space is really great, but free up space intentionally. What can you do with that extra time after you learn it? Like, I agree. I don't want people to be like, I'm going to get 8 extra hours this week because of this. Like, it takes time and investment, and it will eventually get to where you are being more efficient. And what do you plan to do with that time? What can you create? What can you design? What can you just sit and be with that you couldn't have if you didn't have this extra help?
Yes. And if you're looking, for outside of just exploring the different platforms and trying to figure out which one you might want to learn, the other skill set that I think you can focus on if you're really interested in beefing up your skills around AI is prompting. And I think, number one, it's a learnable skill. So there's you can get some free YouTube videos out there. Our Jim Spellos did some fabulous training at Summit at our summit last year around prompting, and really showcased, what good prompting can do for you. So, I liken this back to when the internet was sort of coming of age, and we were talking about search terms and keywords and how to create really good searches on search engines. This is a similar skill set that I think, number one, if you haven't thought about it, you're probably behind. And number two, there's a ton of accessible learning on how to prompt. There are a lot of people who are putting out content that really, there's no maybe one science to it. It's probably dependent on platform, dependent on usage, dependent on what you want out of it. But AI prompting is a skill set that you can absolutely harness and learn and engage with. So if you're looking for like 2 key takeaways, I would definitely say thinking about being very intentional about the time that you will be saving and what you're going to use that for, and honing your prompting skills are kind of the 2 things that I would focus on.
I love it. I love it. Well, hopefully this has been helpful for those of you all who put AI on that. Message us. We said this last season, but we say it again. We love to hear from you, the community, and the listeners. So if you have any tips, if you're like, I want a part 2 of this, or you didn't touch on this that I really want to know, or you're not talking about this and we think you should, please reach out. We would love to hear from you.
Very much so. Thank you for listening.
Thanks.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Beyond the Desk Admin Advocates. We hope you enjoyed diving deep into the world of admins with us.
Remember, this podcast isn't just about listening, it's about taking action. Whether it's advocating for yourself in the workplace or supporting your fellow admins, let's continue to elevate this profession together. If you have any thoughts, questions, or topics you'd like us to explore in future episodes, don't hesitate to reach out to us on social media or through our website.
Until next time, keep pushing beyond the desk. And remember, change begins with you. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode.